output.
That's all I need to say.
Great. Okay. And Scott, welcome. Ed was just saying, yeah, as we entered this in the minutes, you know, that he contacted you. I'm going to butcher
Yufan.
Yufan, thank you. Yufan, about what was conveyed on the TCK mailing list in terms of the repos and the output, and we'll expect to hear back shortly in the next week or two about a follow-up.
Is there a change that needs to be applied still? Because I gave myself a date, but I don't see it here. Did I forget to save it or something? So I guess that change got lost. I'll make it again. No later than. All right.
Okay, sounds good. On the next one, so I have a preliminary version of a couple of open rewrite rules that are going through the TCK and applying basically the changes that Ollie had done on the servlet branch. And it's working for a simple test case, but when I apply for the whole branch, it's missing a bunch. So I have to increase the test cases and see where it's falling down. But it does look like it could be, possible certainly to automate a large chunk of it. The big problem, as I was mentioning, was the fact that the libraries that we include in the test artifacts are kind of difficult to grok out of just the source code itself, and even with the combination of trying to identify what the legacy artifact bundle had included, there are some issues with how do we pull that out. So that's like one of the things that I'll have to do more work on, but for now, we're basically dropping in a stub that says there's a call to a utility class, so they need to add the libraries for this test. And so, even worst case, if you had to fill those in for any test that had a specific artifact, that still would be a lot of boilerplate or a lot of hand codings removed. I'll put the link to the open rewrite rules in these minutes.
Hey, Scott Stark.
Yep.
Your audio is kind of muffled.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure what microphone it's using. Okay, is that any better?
Yep, much better.
Okay.
I thought it was my hearing, which isn't the best. And
Yeah, mine too, but yeah, no, I guess I had the other microphone hooked up. All right, so that should be better. So do you want me to repeat anything? Or it looks like you got it. I
Yeah,
mean,
it was,
actually, worst case, I think it's better off because at a minimum, we would have like the JUnit
good
test
point.
added, annotations added, and a stub for the Archillion. It's just we have some, hand coding work to do around the artifact, adding any embedded library artifacts that a test might use.
Mhm.
and I think there's some, like in some other test vehicles, I mean test buckets, we see more parent, whether it's a parent directory reference or three, four, parent directory references up, a lot of code sharing via other directory references.
Mhm.
So it's like library references, but there's like I think like code it's just like shared with other test groups as well.
Well, yeah, but those are kind of straightforward because they still come out of the legacy test artifact, and so we just when we generate the deployment method, we're just referencing the fully qualified name of the classes that are in there, so it kind of doesn't matter where they're located.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. The only problem is when there's been a library that was actually in the legacy build created from Ant. That's the problematic piece because there's no code representation, and even the contents of that we can get. Actually, there's a couple things I need to try. Going deeper into the legacy archive and kind of doing the same thing, recreating the library archive is one thing to try. We had tried one approach where we were basically just trying to use the archive as is, but then it required having the legacy TCK available, and that's not going to be practical, for going forward. It's not practically a way to run the new TCK to have the old TCK bundle available.
What about the case when there's no Archillion involved? Like if we when we want to generate like just a standalone TCK, which is a subset. Should we automate that as well? And I mean, it should.
Well, the question is, how does it show up in the legacy archive? Because the only thing, what's driving the generation of the deployment method is if there's an artifact that needs to be deployed as part of the test. So when I'm using your jar to shrink wrap utility, if it goes and looks for a given test package and sees that there's an archive that needs to be deployed to the container, then that's when it will assume that we need Archillion. If there's not such a thing, then basically it should have just converted it to a Java a JUnit test and not include Archillion.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll have, like I said, once I get it running a little better, we're gonna have to go through and double check, some cases to make sure it's actually doing that correctly. But so because there are two rules. There's a rewrite rule for converting the Javadoc test name to JUnit test annotation, and then there's a separate rule for adding the Archillion deployment method based on whether or not there is a test artifact. So, either they run, I think they run independently.
Nice. Yeah, that'll be great. Because I think those are the two main cases really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's like still some configuration that we need to further incorporate. That's sitting out in property files or something like that we'll run into, but the bulk of the work is certainly those two things. So hopefully by the end of the week, I've got that in sufficient shape that people can take a look at it and start evaluating the transformations.
Nice. And I was I started looking at like trying the other cases, like just like regular jars should be fine, but also ears. And
Yeah,
I want to add the ear support definitely.
yeah, we'll
And
have to do that. Yeah, that's actually after this first phase is picking up if the non-wars, basically we're just focusing on wars at this point.
yep. Which is I think sufficient for for the stage, but it doesn't hurt to add to do the ears too, and
Yeah.
just get it all going. Nice. And any work that we do manually that we've been doing over the last year or so, still which was the question Ollie had, this I think the output is going to be a pull request that you
Yeah.
run, and
Right.
if there's already work that's been done, you just don't we just don't do that for the ones that have been done. And
Yeah, no, like I said, responding to Ollie, I mean, the first thing is that his work will certainly be a mechanism by which we're validating the automated transformation.
mm,
I don't think it's, like I pointed out a case where, maybe there could be a semantic difference because of class loading, as obviously we see class loading as a problematic aspect of, EE and the TCK, because he had moved classes from an embedded jar into the war classes directory. So maybe one implementation would have a different behavior from that, but in general, there's only a few of those.
and one other thing I wanted to point out that came in the email conversation with Ollie is or some other issue is the servlet TCK is only for the standalone servlet TCK. We still need to do the platform TCK servlet test, which haven't been done yet. So that's just the pending work, just to mention that in case others weren't aware of that. And I think the same will be true for as we do other standalone TCKs, like the standalone persistence TCK, that will I'm hoping that'll be something that the platform TCK persistence tests can depend on. But we'll see how that goes. But I think we'll create these TCKs as separate module, Maven modules, submodules, and where I think where I don't know if there's any if there should be like one Maven module, submodule for the platform TCK, or several for each different technology under the platform TCK. But I think that's
well, I mean, that's how we have to structure. That's how we're structuring the build anyway, right?
Yep.
The current TCK refactor branch is one module per technology, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Which is good because that separates the dependencies better anyway. So, if you actually had separate artifacts, well, if you're releasing a bundle of separate Maven artifacts as the platform TCK, you can update, just the ones that have changes if their upstream dependencies change, which is a lot better than having to rebuild the whole thing.
Yep, good point. And yeah, so I think like the servlet technology under the platform TCK would have both, and possibly the standalone servlet TCK source would just move to the servlet spec, being an active spec. For not as active specs, for the not as active specs, the spec teams probably won't receive the source for their standalone TCK, and that would probably stay in the platform TCK, but you never know. Which ones will stay and which ones will go, I think, based on feedback so far. And what I mean is, we would like the TCKs to be in the respective spec repos. So I would expect servlet to move, the standalone servlet spec TCK to move at, hopefully at some point. And that's on something,
Right.
we have to discuss that though, further, but all right. Does anyone else have other, item for, anyone else have updates on other TCK refactoring, maybe on, the manual efforts that we've been doing in other areas they want to share?
Hi, Scott. Alvin here. So I've been working on JSP TCKs, like it's manual effort. I was able to convert at least a few of the tests into Aquilian and JUnit. So probably by maybe within a week, I should be able to get a PR that converts all the JSP TCK tests into Aquilian. Also, we have the ELTCK refactored PR and already reviewed. Maybe I'll wait for some more time for any more comments before we merge it. Yeah, both of this is ELTCK, EL.
Oh, EL, yeah,
language.
yeah.
Yeah, both of them are like manual effort. Yeah. ELTCK did not have to use any Aquilian, it's only JUnit. But for JSP, Pages TCK, we are using Aquilian and JUnit. Also to note that I'm not using any vehicle implementation here. So basically both of them include the standalone vehicle implementation only until the vehicle related code is figured out. So yeah, both of them are like a manual effort without any automation.
So JSP, also no Aquilian, is that what you said? So
no,
both?
JSP has both Aquilian and JUnit.
Okay.
ELTCK has only JUnit.
Okay.
Yeah.
WebSocket refactoring PR is open. That includes both platform and standalone TCK. That uses Aquilian, and there is no vehicle dependency for WebSocket. And apart from that, I'm working also on JTA TCK. That is work in progress. The refactoring code is complete. The testing is in progress with the failures, which I'm debugging post refactoring.
And which one did you just say?
WebSocket PR is open for review. There are no open comments. All the review comments has been addressed. If any more review comments I get, I will address it as soon as I get. JTA TCK.
Oh, JTA.
The code,
Nice.
yeah, the code is complete. Refactoring code is complete. Testing is in progress. There are failures during testing, and I'm debugging and fixing them.
Excellent. And just to mention it, again, here, because we mentioned it before, we're expecting to use EE10 implementations for validation, or EE10's relevant specs for validation of TCKs for the development aspect of the TCK work. Once we start adding EE11 dependencies, then we're going to lose the ability to be able to validate our work. And then it's, we've done that, and we've done that a few times now. We kind of go into the dark side of where we don't know if test failures are caused by bugs in the test, or implementation problems, or environmental problems of some sort. And it'll be good to have that to make it make us more effective when we're validating the rewriting. And at some point we'll be ready to add EE11 tests, and that'll be great. When that's going to be, I don't know. I think that's going to, that would be when we have the TCKs rewritten and pass and against EE10 or the relevant specs. So it'll be great. Yeah, that'll be a really great milestone for us to reach, and we'll have a big celebration for that. Hey, let's see if there's nothing else. I added a TCK challenge, which we discussed in the platform call yesterday. And I just wanted to mention it here in case people in this call weren't aware of it, or have feedback, or wanted to discuss it all. And I think my current thought on this particular challenge, which is basically we have a EE8 implementation that was previously compatible. They obviously made some change in their code base, and they're now challenging a test that they've passed, and lots of other implementations have passed before. And going back for earlier, before EE8, maybe to EE6 or so. I don't know. I don't remember. But the gist of it, I think, is the platform specification may not be exact about calling out the requirement. But there's basically an ear with that contains a EJB and a WAR, and both the EJB jar and the WAR contain the EJB interface class. And the current wording, as I read it, of the platform spec, which I pasted in here, is portable applications must not depend on having or not having the EJB classes in the I think if I understand it correctly, not having the EJB classes in both the WAR and the EJB versus in the, the share, the air lib would be the, another place where it could move to. But portable applications, I think would be able to work with the interface being in both places is one interpretation of that. And I think that's the interpretation that was previously used. But the request for the challenge is to make a call that follows the exact wording, and I don't know, yeah, we're going to have to come up with with a call on this. And so wanted to give you all a chance to chime in if you wanted to, and either on the issue, on the platform mailing list, we can raise it on, I think Ion's going to raise it on the servlet mailing list, and I raised it on the EJB mailing list already. And so, yeah, any feedback?
Well, it seems like, the norm for a war is war first class loading. So as soon as you introduce EJBs that are external to the web application, it seems like you're going to have a configuration of the application server that allows for parent first delegation, because you have to be able to take the interface that's from the EJB jar as the type. I mean, what they're running into is that they have the type loaded in both the EJB class loader, EJB container, class loader, and the war, and so they're having an injection failure. It seems like to me we would have had to configure the class loading for this case. So the referencing that Glassfish is doing parent first delegation, but is that because they have a Glassfish descriptor that they're incorporating? Or I would find it unlikely that they would delegate to that model, because that's not the norm for the web container.
Yeah, I don't think they have
I mean, this is the deal. So, I mean, I guess this is the question I'd ask them is, I mean, do they have a way to configure parent first delegation on a war in any, or, do they have a descriptor that allows for that? Because I expect that that's what's the requirement of this is.
let's see. Just open up a recent copy of it, the test, but I don't think there's any. I mean, this probably is a let's see, deployment descriptor in there, but I have to look to see what. Here's one application.
Well, we have all the standard ones, but I mean, in the past, we probably included Glassfish specific descriptors in here because it was the reference implementation. Do we not have those as legacy anymore?
Well, we have not yet removed the Glassfish, the reference implementation
Okay.
deployment
Yeah, so
descriptors yet.
I mean, here's a Sun application. But that's for security. That's the standard. That's the standard. That's still security.
So, yeah, I mean, I think Glassfish is, they probably didn't need to do anything special. And I don't think.
Well, I would certainly expect that there's some tests that require a class loader that loads from the war first.
let's see. So so I guess the key is, so the servlet is invoking the EJB, and I guess
Right, well-
the problem was on the call, they're passing in, when, I think they said the wrong, the wrong, the other, the other EJB interface, was being referenced, and so they got a failure instead of them both using the same consistent,
Right.
both the EJB and the servlet using the
Well,
same.
from the exception, what it looked like was happening is that they were, during the injection of the EJB interface on the servlet, that was failing, presumably because two types, they were trying to inject one type and the other type's referenced.
Yeah, certainly it seemed like that. But yeah, so.
But I mean, so like I said, I would first ask them, do they have the ability to configure the WAR to use parent first delegation, and then just add it? I mean, that's an allowable change because class voting is, non-trivial.
Yeah, I didn't get it. I didn't get into that. Yeah, into that. I mean, they passed before. They are, they are EE8 certified already, and I don't know why they made a change. But sometimes, I don't. I didn't get into the, the why why did you pass before, and what did you change? I mean, they're closed source, I think. I don't think they're open source, and. Yeah, so we could certainly ask. Um, um,
Well, I mean, so for example, wildfly certainly, do we have to add a wildfly specific descriptor to pass this test?
I didn't look. I don't think so, though. I think we.
What's isn't our default war first class loading, or do we do parent first delegation?
So, I don't know, because we changed. Let's see. We made I know we made a change, and then like 3 or 4 years ago. But I think, like let's see, if we just look at is this I just want to see, is it a remote? Is it a remote B?
Look at the sec test interface.
Sec test.
No, it's just a POJO EJB.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, what makes sense is that, you could have war first class loading when it's just a war, because that's all there is. But as soon as you're embedded in a year, then switch to parent first delegation, or, but.
So in this case, well, I mean, the EJB should be in its own, neither, it's not, the EJB isn't in the top level deployment, isn't it? It's going to be
No, it's in an EJB jar.
Yeah,
but I mean, the only reason to include EJBs in a war is if that war itself could be deployed independent, independent of that year. I mean, it seems like to me this test is, they've created, 3 container artifacts, 2 wars in an year, presumably because those can be run separately. And then there's also a test to bundle these in an ear to see how it behaves, but I'm not sure.
So I think, I mean, my read of the oops, let's see, my read of, find the text, my read of what I think the part about I think the implementations have to be consistently used, like in an ear, they need to consistently use, load from the EJB class sorry, the EJB, class loader, first. Or, I guess they can depend, they can load, they can depend on the war, but that's got to be, that would have to be both. I would expect, and the EJB copy of the class to be, to be respected. But I think I think the test has the interface in both because it's
Yeah,
a
but-
class loader specific thing of how implementation wants to make
Well,
things work.
That's the question. I mean, what spec and what assertions is the test making? I mean, is that just
yeah,
specifically about?
Yeah, I looked at those and let me see the test is not trying to let's see. I mean, we're just going to see the assertion,
Let's
the
go
assertion
through that.
IDs, but here.
Well,
I looked
what's
I looked at
the
the assertion I looked up the assertions and neither of them
This seems to be
are
more about, security.
um,
I mean, what they're trying to test is security, has nothing to do with class loading.
yes, exactly. Yeah. So I think that part, so I think basically the test was written to be portable, independent of how the implementation is doing its class loading and covering multiple possibilities to avoid class not found errors if the implementation needed them in both. Like if you, if you
Yeah, but
had,
that certainly brings up the possibility that there's going to be a conflict too if you have if they're loaded in both, if they're loaded in more than one class loader.
well, I think if it's loaded in both, you'd have to be treating it as a remote call.
Yeah, true, or that, but it's definitely not.
It seems like they're not, and it's typical to
I
not.
mean, is there any way that this is a legacy that this used to be a remote call and then it got changed, and so really it's not valid for it to be in the war?
I don't have the old source, the pre-Jakarta source anymore, but I don't think so. I don't think it would be unusual for that for this to change. That from the, I mean, there's with millions of lines of test code, who knows, but just going by memory, I don't think that tests like these were ever, I think they were written and then they stayed the way they were.
And look at the build.xml, it's definitely meaning to include the EGB interfaces in both, in all three.
Yep.
War, okay.
So Scott, Marlowe, and Stark, I want to ask, I appreciate the detailed thought experiment discussion you've been having, and I recognize that someone on the servlet team who would need to reason about this problem and potentially make a decision, or as we talked about, be informed, might benefit from having some kind of brief description of the conclusion that you two have come to after this discussion. Do you think that's worthwhile to capture in some text so we can make sure that?
Yeah, I think that should be added to the issue is, I would, well, I'll follow up. I mean, basically I want to ask, can they configure their server to behave obviously the way this expects, and to, certainly give the, what the situation is, so that, because it's going to be up. I think more than likely this still is going to fall back on the platform, because it's going to depend on the class loading behavior of an ear where we have duplicate classes. So, we can have the servlet group ping us on whether or not they believe that's the case, or whether or not there's specific servlet text that covers this. But in other words, I think we're going to have to, go back to the platform group. But yeah, I'll take that as action item.
So that goes into the issue, and I agree that's the best place to put it. All right, I just want to make sure this useful and
I will upload the recording. And Ed,
information.
you kind of froze for a second while you were
Yeah,
talking,
having
and
some
I started
USB trouble.
talking because you seemed to be, you paused, but
Right. I just wanted to make sure this is useful and very difficult to elicit understanding. Super deep context understanding is encoded somewhere in a reusable form.
and,
The issue.
and before I put the mic down on it, I'm just going to mention quickly, just for this recording, that I think that the question that you mentioned, Scott, back to the implementer, I think that, I see that as a as also considering application portability. Will applications that work on other EE8 implementations also work on their implementations? And when people write specifically to their implementation, will those be portable to others? And that's, that would be the, to me, that would be a reason to not exclude this particular test, or consider it it excluded.
Yeah, I agree.
But
We don't want to
yeah,
exclude unless we must.
yeah, I don't really see that this is trying to test. Well, because by definition, this is going to require application specific descriptors anyway, because it's testing security. So you're going to have to do a mapping of, because security is always has required that. There's no, certainly an application server can take and like have a default behavior where it takes the security roles and just have like kind of a pattern for transforming that into an actual mapping. But in general, security always requires a separate application server specific mapping file, which we see here for the Sun, the legacy Sun, which I guess is the origin of Glassfish, right?
Yes, it's yeah, definitely, and it still works with Glassfish, and
Yeah, so
it's easy to remap to other implementations, and I think
right,
that's typical
absolutely.
from conversations with others, and
Right.
we've done that as well. So yeah, and
So
I
yeah,
don't
I mean, I don't expect that this test is of the form that will this run without any application server specific descriptors.
Oh yeah, it definitely needs some descriptors for sure. Yep, definitely. Yep. Yeah, agreed.
And certainly configuring class loading behavior is allowable, but yeah, I'm not sure why. For a local interface, I'm not sure why you would include the EGBs in the war in the first place. I'm not sure what the history of that was.
Yeah,
I mean, like I said, I would because it seems like to me we went through this exercise of getting rid of remote at one point, and so I still would expect that historically these were, because frankly there was a point where there wasn't a local interface, right? I mean, I would expect that these were remote interfaces at one point.
Yeah, yeah,
and they're in the wars for that historical artifact, and it's it's probably not correct here, but.
I do remember challenging some other tests to remove the duplicate interface.
Yeah, it seems like to me I recollect we had issues with where we were going to do remote removal, and yeah, there was you don't want duplicate classes in the ear for sure in general, unless there is a serialization of the invocations.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And it's not, I looked at all the assertion IDs, and none of them are from the spec, sections that, that talk about, ear, like EGB classes in ears and use in servlets, and, which I, paste, some of which I pasted here.
Okay.
So it's not, that's not assertion related. So, all right. So, yeah, great. I'll ping you later, Scott, and I'll take a look to see what if we have anything in Wildfly specific for that test, just so you know.
Yeah, that'd be good, because I mean, and because in the old days when I was still heavily involved in this piece, that we would have needed that because we used to default to the class loading out of classes out of the warfer. So, you know, if you say we've changed that, that would obviate the need for that.
Yep, great point.
Okay. All right, we'll follow up on the issue then.
All right. That's anything else from others?
Okay.
All right, let me stop sharing and stop the recording.